Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. The topic today is solutions for creating competence and resilience. This is going to look at how we can learn to build competence and maintain resilience, both for yourself and also perhaps for any team members that you may lead as well. Today's presenter is one of our IMechE associates, Fiona Pawley. Keep the introductions brief. We have about an hour in terms of the presentation to include questions. Any questions that you do have, if you put those into the attendee chat, along with any of the comments that you think are relevant, and we'll look to address many of these questions at the end of the presentation, which should be about a 20-minute Q&A session at the end. Without any further ado, I'll hand over to Fiona.
Thanks ever so much, Darren, and welcome everybody. It's really nice for us to have you here. We're going to be talking about creating competence and resilience today. So let's get straight into it. Our agenda, we're going to define competence and resilience, and then we're going to look at 5 steps for building competence and 6 keys to resilience. And as Darren said, we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So a little bit about myself. My name is Fiona Pawley. I am a business coach and a trainer for the Institution of Mechanical Engineers. I have about 20 years experience in event management and motorsport specifically. I did work for the institution for a while, managing their excellent Formula Student program. If any of you have come across that, it's a really fantastic engineering program. And my contact details are there if you want to click on the QR code and connect with me on LinkedIn. It will be great to connect. So we're going to start the day with a little quote and a pause for thought. Without purpose, life is motion without meaning, activity without direction, and events without reason. So I just want you to take a little moment to kind of settle in, because I don't know where you've rushed from. Is this a lunch break, or, you know, are you in between meetings, as we're doing lots of that at the moment virtually? And let's just settle in and really think about what that quote means from Rick Warren. So when you think about how you're approaching your day, or when you think about your personal resilience or the competencies of your team, if you don't have meaning or direction, if you don't understand the whys and the purpose, it can just be chaos, and it can feel like those events without reason. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that today. So competence, the ability to do something successfully and or efficiently. Now, when we think about competence, quite often we lock that hand in hand with confidence. And when we think about competence, we have expectations of competence, particularly from people like surgeons or pilots, or people who we trust with our own personal safety or well-being. So I just want you to take a little moment now and reflect on, where do you view your own competence in your current role, or the competence of your team that you're working with? And where are the strengths of that team or your own areas in terms of doing things competently, success and efficiently? So just take a little moment and have a little reflection on that today. Now, on the flip side of that, we're going to look at resilience. So I've got my little friend here, the cockroach. We know that they are bomb-proof. And they are very, very resilient. And resilience is the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties. And I think that's a really, really key word, that recover quickly. So we're all experiencing bumps in the road, whether, you know, the project plan isn't going quite right, or there's a problem with customers, or, you know, supply chain, whatever your challenge may be. There are always going to be bumps in the road, and there's always going to be things that come our way, whether they're personal or professional, that are unexpected. And it's the recovering from those bumps in the road that is your resilience. It's how do you bounce back? Now, I'm sure lots of us in the COVID years, which seem a distant memory, but also are very present, I think, in our day-to-day ways of working. That's been affected very greatly by the COVID years. People had to demonstrate a lot of resilience in that time. And when you think about your own resilience, and again, just want you a little bit of self-reflection at the moment, when you think about your own resilience, or even the resilience of your team, you know, what are the key components that pull you together or will help you to bounce back? You know, is it network? Is it trust? Is it competence that enables you to be confidently moving forward? So in order to build on your competence, it really helps to be resilient. And we'll talk about the resilience later on in this session. But first of all, we're going to step into 5 steps for building employee competence. So, step 1. You need to know what you're working with and or working towards. So if you want to identify the skills and behaviours that you want to improve, either for yourself or for your team or for the business. So it really helps to develop a competency framework and define the levels of skills and the expected behaviours for each role with every level of the business. Now that's quite a big piece of work in terms of mind mapping the competency skills and the expected behaviours across the business. However, with that clarity and with that clear map, if you like, that competency framework is then a ladder. It's then a space in which people can build on their own competencies and their own skills, develop their own professional behaviours in order to operate within that competency framework far better. It also helps people to understand what's next for them. Not everybody is interested in promotion and, you know, not everybody wants to be the CEO. But I think in all careers, there needs to be some challenge of what's next. What's the development? What am I doing? How am I contributing? And a competency framework really gives you a map of how that works. So that sounds like quite a big undertaking. So we're going to break down how you do this in a step-by-step guide. First of all, you need to collect all the information about each role in each department and more importantly, how they interlink with each other. Now, already you have people working in each role in each department or within your team. Let's say you have a multifaceted team that connects project management, engineering, marketing, sales. You have all of those experts. So it's about finding out what are the behaviours and competencies for those roles that breed success. What are the things that people are doing that are successful for the business or efficient or whatever the objectives that you're going for? So once you have all of that data, then you need to analyse the work and keeping one eye on the future. Now, AI is knocking at the door on lots of different jobs, and you know it can be something that can be incorporated into the business rather than replacing individuals and humans. But think about what is coming down the line for the future of the business and analyse the work. And from there, you can build that competency framework. Now, there might be some overlapping competencies, there might be some overlapping behaviours or values or ways of working. And actually, it's a common red thread between all of the roles within the organisation or within your team that you're working with. And that's really helpful to identify what those things are, because that's what binds people together. And when times are tough, and in business, sometimes times are tough, it's actually the values and the common areas that people are working together that really helps to build resilience and get through those tough times and get over those bumps really, really quickly. So as with a lot of engineering interrogation, we validate and we revise. You're not going to get it right first time. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be applicable to all people or all departments or all roles. But it's a structure and a framework that you can hang conversations on and start building that level of competency for the roles that you have and for the roles that you need in the future. And then it's about implementation and sharing your framework. Now, if you've galvanized the, the team or the individuals at the beginning to collect the information about their roles, when you're then talking about rolling out the framework, it's not a surprise, and they've actually bought into the process. So this isn't something to be done in silo as a leader or as a manager to be then delivered onto your team or your organization. But it is about finding the strengths within the individual roles and the individuals of your teams or your businesses, and getting them along the journey with you. So once we've done all of this, we think about objectives. So we agree the objectives, and they can be part of an annual review, or they can be part of quarterly reviews that you would normally do as part of your personal development programs, or they can be global, business objectives that can be issued more broadly to the organization. But I think the key here is to mix the formal and the informal in terms of your checking in, checking up, and tracking discussions. So it's all very good and well having a plan. We've got a plan. We've agreed these competencies. These are the skills that we need. This is what good looks like. This is the modelling of what we're trying to work towards. Okay, I'll see you in 12 months' time. That's where misunderstanding happens. That's where assumption happens. That's where miscommunication happens. So it's really important to sense check the understanding, to check in on the progress, and then to support when there are challenges and it's not working, because you're not going to get it right first time. And it is important to, in that objective setting, to really talk about recognition and reward. So what you are doing today is excellent because it has a great impact with our customers. It converts loads of new business, or, we're much more efficient in this process. How can we dial that up to make it even better? So this isn't about all the things that you need to do to bolt on to be far more competent, but actually rewarding the things that are really working at the moment is essential. Step 3. So once you know what you need and you've galvanized the support of the team or the individuals, then you need to find development opportunities for people to flex those muscles. It's a little bit like going to the gym. It's all very good and well saying, I want to be thinner, or, I want to be fitter or faster. But actually, if I don't go to the gym on a regular basis, or I don't move those muscles on a regular basis, that dream or objective is going to be extremely difficult to get to, and it's going to take far longer. So this is where training or coaching or mentoring. Coaching and mentoring are two very distinct, different things. So coaching, the coaching conversations that you can have as leaders, you don't need to be experts in that person's field. You don't need to be much more senior to them. You can have coaching conversations, peer to peer. Mentoring is much more telling and supporting. So generally mentoring is much more hierarchical or more senior to junior relationships. So they are slightly different. There's, build a resource library, look at e-learning. Just to sense check that you're actually staying with me and you haven't drifted off. It would be great if you can add into the chat box any other methods that you think would help develop employee competence in your organisation or in your experience in the past in other organisations. So I'm just going to take a few minutes now for you to fill up the chat box. And the point of this is going to the gym and flexing those muscles, because actually once you build the competencies, the muscle memory, when things go wrong and times are tougher, that's when you bounce back and your resilience is far better, because you've actually laid the foundations already in the process of building the competencies. Okay, step 4. So we need to practice. And as leaders or managers, or even, as an individual responsibility, you need to make time to practice, to make yourself give some dedication and some space to learning how to embed those competencies. You get up every morning generally and you brush your teeth. It's about having routine or second habits that happen quite organically. And the only way to do that is practice. Once you've started practicing, it is really, really good to reflect and then revise. And this is where the mentoring or coaching conversations that you can have at work can come in, or even training courses give you an opportunity to reflect. So in the reflection, what am I doing well? What am I going to start doing? What am I going to stop doing? What isn't working? And stop what's not working. Find a way, find a new way, an innovative solution to get round the things that are not really working. Make those revisions, go for round 2 and reflect, practice, reflect, practice, reflect, practice. And that's where you end up towards perfection. Now, perfection is a really, really big ask and a big undertaking. But if we don't aim high, then we're not going to get there at all. It's a little bit like driving a car. You know, if you're looking out your sort of right side window or your passenger side window, you're going to drive in those directions. You're not going to drive forward. So practice, reflect, revise, and get to perfecting your own competencies. And then I touched on this before. We need to share success. And this isn't a selfish endeavor. I'm going to be the best one at it in my organization, and I'm going to, you know, breed competency individually on my own as a pioneer. This is about bringing the people that you work with along with you. So again, I'd like you to pop into the chat box things that are free or inexpensive, little ideas that you might have either witnessed or received or been aware of, to reward and recognize your employees. You know, it doesn't have to be big pay rises. So one organization that I work with, they've dedicated the 3 closest parking spaces to the front door to Employee of the Month. So it's incentivized that you don't have to think about where you're going to park, and, you know, you can have an extra minute in bed because you're not running across the car park, running late for work, if you do something that warrants that you are the Employee of the Month. So I just want you to pop those into the chat box now, and we'll have a little look at those in the Q&A later. So that's how you build competence. Let's look at your resilience. So there are 6 keys to resilience: sense of purpose, positive mental attitude, connecting with others, determination, taking control, and possibly most importantly, looking after yourself. So when we think of purpose, you know, it's quite a big, grandiose statement. What is my purpose? Why am I here? What am I doing in life? Now, I would bet that your organization has a set of values that they are working towards promoting. Do you know what your organization's values are? Do you know what they've decided are the ways of working for your organization? And if you do, most importantly, where do your values align with theirs? Because actually, if you're working somewhere that doesn't align with your values, that's going to create conflict. Or you're working with individuals where your value systems are at opposing angles to each other, that's going to create conflict. And understanding where that conflict is coming from is really, really important in order to move forward and resolve that conflict. Now, Paul Barber, who's the CEO of Brighton and Hove Albion FC, not my favourite team, whatever your favourite team is, that's my favourite team in terms of football, is really, really focused on their values. And, you know, he talks quite openly about building the values are essential to their successes getting into the Premier League. So their values are aim high, act with integrity, exceed expectation, and treat people well. And then overlaid to all of those 4 values are working collaboratively as a team, but also working collaboratively in an individual state as well. Because if you've got people working against you, then the work is going to become harder, slower, inefficient. There's going to be more conflict. So, you know, how Paul structured their club when they were in the championship was to look at every single part of the business and based on these values, identify ways in which they could make the individual elements of the business Premiership ready, from ticketing to the fan base experience, to the grandstands, to the pitches, to the catering, every element. They were working based on these values to a Premiership standard. So when they actually got into the Premiership, all they had to think about was the football, because everyone wasn't suddenly ripping up the rule book and, you know, having to get up to speed with dealing with, you know, difficult ticketing systems, or, you know, the pitch wasn't right, or the marketing proposition wasn't right. They had built the blocks based on their values, ready for their success. So, positive mental attitude. Now, I think we can all, possibly we've all experienced getting out the wrong side of the bed in the morning and thinking, ugh, what's happening? Everything's going horribly wrong. I challenge you, you can choose your attitude at any moment of the day. So if it starts bad, it doesn't have to end bad. And if you're sat at your desks now and you've had a terrible morning and things are going horribly wrong, you can reframe your attitude and restart the day at any given moment. Working with an open mind. So being curious. You know, when we talk about competence and resilience, actually, it's not a selfish endeavor. It's not I know best, but actually be curious. Maybe you don't have all of the answers. So if you have members of your team that are coming up with new ideas or different ways of working, actually, oh, we've always done it that way, or we tried that 5 years ago, it didn't work. Go with an open mind, because their perspective is going to be slightly different from yours. Their experience is going to be slightly different from yours. And you might learn something, and also you might improve, change. And if nothing else, you will build a better relationship with that individual if you are approaching their ideas with more of an open mind. This is another key element to having a positive mental attitude. So getting a sense of perspective. Now, it's really, really easy to get overwhelmed and bogged down in meetings after meetings, emails, deadlines, customers complaining. You know, it can get pretty intense at times at work and very, very stressful. And then overlay that with whatever's going on in your personal life, family life, you know, care commitments, whatever it may be. But actually trying to get a sense of perspective and really not sweating the small stuff and really challenging yourself and questioning, is this really that important? Is this really that urgent? Is this really critical? And concentrating on the things that are going to make the biggest impact, the best impact, and not over worrying about the things that you cannot affect, the things that you cannot change, the things that you cannot control. Emotional vampires, they are everywhere. In coaching, we call them radiators or drains in terms of energy. Do you have that person, you know, that's a constant negative Nelly? Their viewpoint is, oh, well, you know, this is not great and that is not great. And, oh, it's always this way. They drain your energy. So be careful about how much time and airtime you give to the emotional vampires. You know, you can keep your interactions with them at work shorter and sharper. Oh, yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you very much. I look forward to hearing more about that. I've got to go now. I've got a meeting. By minimizing the emotional vampires, they do not deplete your energies, but also they don't deplete your own mental attitude into that more negative space, because it's very easy to start grumbling and complaining. You know, when everyone is like, oh, it's always this bad. I say, okay, what's bad? How are we changing it? What are we doing about it? What's practical? What's realistic? Is there a sense of perspective that we can put on this? Has someone else got a different idea? Have an open mind. Another watch out is having absolutes. You always do this, you never do that, particularly when you're leading a team or, you know, managing someone. if you need to give someone some feedback and you need to think about changing behavior, being much more specific about the impact of that feedback is much more effective. So rather than you always cut me off in a meeting, you know, my voice is never heard, or you're rude to me in front of the customers, be specific. When we had that meeting on Tuesday, you cut me off and the impact was the customer thinks we don't know what we're talking about. And they're losing confidence in our ability to deliver this service or to produce this project. Next time, if you want to talk to me about that beforehand, absolutely, let's set aside some time. Next time, if you want to talk in that meeting, then, you know, just let me finish and then absolutely say your piece. But when you do that thing, it diminishes our competence in front of the customer. So be more specific and avoid the absolutes. I'm going to run through this next. So the ABCDE technique to reframing challenging situations. So taking control is really, really key. And by this, I don't mean micromanaging or controlling behavior, but thinking about the things that I as an individual can control. So my presentation today was an absolute disaster on the webinar. That's my adversity. I believe I was terrible. Nobody understood me. The nerves got the better of me. I was rambling. I ran over time. That might happen. The consequences are I'm never going to present again. I'm not putting myself in that position. And I think people think I'm a bit of an idiot and I don't know what I'm talking about. Dispute. Now, this is, if it wouldn't stand up in court, you can't believe it. You won't allow yourself to believe it. So if you can dispute the things that I have thought on the A, B, and C, I'm not a professional presenter. People asked questions. They were engaged. They wanted more information. Actually, wasn't that bad. And then the energy. And energy, you can, again, in coaching, we talk about introverted energy and extroverted energy, and that's not being shy or quiet or bold or loud. But for some people, having lots of people energizes them. The extroverts, they need lots of people around them. And for some people who are introverted, having lots of interaction with people can be quite exhausting and can really deplete their energies. So they have to be selective about who they're using their time and their energy with. So energy, choose your state of energy and what you need to do, whether it's a self-reflection or whether it's talking to a friend. Actually, it wasn't that bad. I'm not saying that I'm not going to do it again, but I will practice a bit more, or I'll watch some other presentations and I'll think about what I could do better next time. So it's about taking control and switching that attitude. This is really, really key. Connecting with others is really essential. And whether they are the people within your organization, whether they're people that you connect with professionally, like platforms like LinkedIn, or the, you know, for example, the institution, maybe you're a member of the institution, you come to member events, or they're just friends and family. But actually having connection with others is really, really key in building your resilience, and having a support network that you can have a specific conversation with about a specific thing is really, really key. So I just want you to take a moment now and have a little think. If you were having a really, really tough time and work was really, really overwhelming, is there a person that you could call or speak to that would help you to get out of that overwhelm? Now, I think of a couple of different people in my life. I've got one particular friend. We've been friends since university, and she's very straightforward and very no nonsense. And when I need a straightforward, no nonsense answer, she's the person I go to. And she's like, right, okay, that was it. You know, this is what we've got to do. What are your options? Let's get moving. What can you do better next time? What's going on? Whereas I've got other friends who will let me wallow and, you know, explore the options and the emotions and the energy. So think about the people that you have around you. Avoid those energy vampires. Yeah, avoid them. But think about people that top you up. But then also don't forget, it is important for you to extend your time and energy to others when they need a bit of resilience boosting as well. It's really important to put some credit in the relationship bank. And ways that you can build that are simply, and we used to have what we call the water cooler moment, but having a coffee with someone. This week, who have you called at work to just check they're okay? Or who has called on you to check you're okay? Not a set Teams meeting, not a face-to-face meeting, not a, we've got to get this deadline type thing, but actually just checking in with your colleagues and sharing, my bank holiday weekend plans are X, or I'm going to go and walk the dog, this evening in a new area that I found. Just that connection. When things are getting really, really tough, it's important for your resilience to bounce back and bounce back quickly. This ties in nicely to your sort of mental attitude. People who believed they could achieve a certain goal did so in 80% of cases. And those that didn't believe only succeeded in 20% of the time. So if you reframe your thinking and think, what do I want? What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? What am I passionate about? What meets my values? Then your determination will carry you through. So this one, I think we think about me time potentially as a bit of a luxury for lots and lots of people, and particularly in the world of work. And even though this says looking after yourself, also showing others in your team or leading others or, people within your organization, if you demonstrate good behavior and good self-care, it gives other people permission to do the same. So it might be, for example, have you sat at your desk all day today and it's lunchtime and you haven't actually moved? So it might be getting up and going outside and walking around the block and getting some fresh air and taking a buddy with you and saying, look, I need to clear my head. Do you want to, join me? It's about proper rest and reflection, because actually when you're at play, when you're doing something that is stimulating a very different part of your brain, you will come back to business solutions with a clear perspective, with a new perspective, with some fresh ideas. And there's lots of studies to prove that, when we stop thinking about the problem and go and do something else, whether it's, walking, cinema, music, whatever it is that you want to do and you enjoy, you're much more likely to come back with more creative ideas and think slightly differently about the challenges that you're facing. A quick little tip for anyone who's experiencing anxiety, whether that's in, before a really big important meeting or before a presentation, or even just generally day to day, if you're feeling very, very anxious, the things that move your body, move your senses, really draw you out of those anxiety states. So I want everyone to do this with me now. I want you to just sit back from your desks, relax your shoulders, and I want you to take 2 short breaths in through your nose and then a long breath out. So, and you can do that a couple of times. And I just want you to think about your body and how it feels and concentrate on unfurling all of this, because we like this a lot of the time if we're desk-based. So just looking after yourself and having a bit of me time is really, really key for building your resilience. Because when stress builds, if you've got little tips and tricks and ways of handling those high stressful moments, then you're much more likely to ride over the bumps in the road. Now, sometimes the bumps are big bumps and sometimes they're small bumps. And sometimes if you start practicing these resilience kind of techniques and methodologies and ways of thinking and ways of working, it would almost be like suspension. You don't even really feel the bumps in the road anymore with the things that you may have been concerned and preoccupied with in the past. So that's everything from me today. Thank you very much for listening. We're going to hand back over to Darren, and we're going to jump into Q&A.
Thanks, Fiona. So I think maybe should we start off the two exercises that you did during the presentation?
Yeah.
To get some of the comments. Yeah. So some of the techniques that were listed by the attendees, techniques like shadowing, on-the-job learning, similar, I guess. It's quite interesting. Reverse mentoring, junior to senior. Do you have any thoughts on that approach?
Yeah, absolutely. I think traditional hierarchical organizations, we think about learning from the more experienced, the more senior, the bigger job title type people. And actually, that learning is a two-way street. So the next generation of people that are coming into your organization, they have a completely different lived experience to how you were educated, what the world of work was like for you. That their experience is evolving and is much more digital and has very different goals and objectives, if you like, in terms of what they expect from work, how they want to work. So absolutely, that 360 kind of mentoring, it's not top down. It's not I'm telling you how to do all of these things, but actually if you galvanize a culture within your organization, and leaders do not need to be managers, anyone can be a leader, a new starter or a junior to an organization can be a leader in different ways of working, how to cope with resilience, what competence looks like. So absolutely, don't be afraid of either as a new starter speaking up and sharing your ideas, but also as someone who's been in the industry for a long time and well established, for seeking their counsel and finding out their ideas.
And there's another sort of common theme here. One suggestion was providing on-the-job opportunities to learn through assignments are effective. Similar, again, looking for on-the-job opportunities to work on specific skills and competencies, and also placement opportunities in other areas. So again, it seems to be a common thread there. Again, any thoughts on those ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very easy for us to sort of stay in our lane, and this is my job and these are the things that I've got to do. And, most people at work are not twiddling their thumbs and very, very bored. Most people have quite a busy work life. But actually putting your hand up for new opportunities, or trying to work with different teams, or even having a coffee morning with people who are not in the same department as you to get to know other people. The more you can spread that network, the more opportunities will come. And being willing to step forward into trying new things or learning from others, even if it's short term, is definitely going to improve your personal competence, but also you're going to bring that knowledge back to your organization or your team. So absolutely trying other things. And also, let's not forget, how you spend your personal time is really, really key. So are you, a member of a rugby team, or do you, do you like sewing and making things? Like, what are your personal opportunities in trying new things and meeting new people and kind of stretching your own competencies? And particularly with sport, resilience in sport is really, really key, because with certain sports, there's only one winner. Like in motorsport, there's only one winner, and then second place is first loser. But, it's more about how do you bounce back from that losing position, and what keeps you going. So sport is a really good way of building resilience.
Excellent. A couple of other suggestions were networking and conferences, and for some people both those can be quite a challenge, but
yeah, I was talking to a colleague of mine recently, and I have always found him friendly and warm and open, and we always have great conversations. And actually he confessed to me he hates networking, and he really, really doesn't like it. And when I go to networking events, I hate the fact that I'm the person that is always talking to other people. So I put myself into a position where I'm like, hi, who are you? I'm Fiona, blah, blah, blah. Because if I don't talk to anyone because people don't approach me. So networking is a skill, and it is practicing a skill. So the nervousness about networking is, what are people going to think of me? Maybe I have a little bit of imposter syndrome. Why am I here? What am I going to say? I'm going to be awkward and uncomfortable. Invariably, I would say 80% of the room are probably also feeling all of those things. So it's about putting your toe in the water, stretching your little comfort zone, and putting yourself out there. And smiling is a really easy way in. Talking about the weather is a very British way in. But absolutely, it is relationships that you build through things like conferences, internal in your organization or external with your suppliers. They are the things that are going to get you your next job, find your next opportunity, find the next solution to the project that you're working on. It is the people that we buy. We don't buy things and products and services, but we buy people. So the more relationships that you can nurture and build, the more access to competence that you're going to have. And again, if you're looking at building your resilience, the more different types of people that you've got to bounce back from when things are not going so well, and you need that support network.
Excellent. Before we look at this, the second input from the delegates, a couple of questions put in here. First one: is there a technique to take a negative Nelly back up the mood elevator quickly?
I would, in those scenarios, give them some airtime because they need to get that out of their heads. It is a state of being. It is a behavior. If they don't want to change, they're not going to change. You can't make them change. However, I would give them a small amount of airtime to express the things that they are negative about. And then very gently be like, great, okay, so this thing isn't working, or this team isn't functioning better. What would good look like? What are the solutions that we need to implement? How much resource can we add into that? So challenge them on the things that they are complaining about. The other thing is, and I know I do this in a lot more life coaching style, but it's really, really useful in managing people and leading people. Sometimes we just want to empty our heads. Sometimes we don't want solutions. And so when someone comes to you with a problem, asking them, do you want me to hear you out, or would you like some solutions? And sometimes we just want to vent and get it off our chest and get it out of our heads and complain about something. And then we feel better. And I don't know if you've experienced this, Darren, but if you haven't sense checked that, and you're suddenly coming up with loads and loads of, well, we could do this and we could do that, and we've tried that before, and this thing would happen, and they then shut down, or they're not, they're not engaging. There's a lot of yeah. That none of that's going in. It's because they didn't want solutions. They just wanted to vent. So I think give them some airtime, challenge them on what the positive opposite of the thing that they're complaining about would look like, feel like, be like. How could you get there? And sense check with people. Do you want to be heard and just listen to, or do you want me to help you find some solutions?
Very good. Another question here from IMechE, who says, thanks for the presentation, Fiona. How do you prevent your mood being negatively affected if you have to work with an emotional vampire?
Boundaries, 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 IMechE. So you have control over the things that you have control over. How you respond, how you behave, how you engage, what your boundaries are. If this particular emotional vampire does a drive-by of your desk physically, and they keep talking to you ad nauseum about whatever things that they are wanting to talk to you about, how you respond in those situations will determine how their behavior continues. So if you just let them talk and talk and talk, they're not going to stop coming by your desk. So if the other challenge, I mean, the touch on the word emotional, it sounds to me slightly more manipulative than energy vampire. If you are having a problem with how someone is working with you, then seek some support and seek, you know, whether that's HR or whether that's a fellow colleague, but try and find some boundaries for yourself. And having difficult conversations with people, not having a difficult conversation doesn't make that conversation go away. It just makes it worse. And it will make you dread meetings with that person. And it will make you think, oh my God, I can't handle this. Or, you know, every time their email comes into your inbox, you know, there's an anti-dopamine hit of, I don't want to engage with this person. So having a difficult conversation with that person around that, when you say these things to me, the impact on me is X. I would prefer that we work a way that doesn't happen anymore. You know, it's not easy, but seek some support.
Yeah, Sanjay actually made a comment on the question saying, emotional vampire probably take the coaching approach other than directing, ask open questions to let them reflect on their own thoughts, which I think you kind of alluded to there. What's your take on that approach?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, again, having a sense of, do they want to be helped and or change their behavior, or do they just want to rant? And if they're wanting to just rant, then you're not going to change their behavior. But if they understand the impact of their behavior is negative on the team for this reason or that reason, then you can start working with them with the coaching approach of, okay, what does good look like for you? You know, how are we going to work together to improve that situation? But they need to want to be part of that process. So that's a little watch out for you.
Excellent. We'll have maybe one more question, then we'll move on to the second section of delegate input. You mentioned imposter syndrome, which is something I see as a very common issue. Any specific tips on how to manage this for yourself, stroke staff?
I mean, there's a huge amount of, you know, research and videos and, you know, all sorts of stuff that you can find in terms of hints and tips. For me, imposter syndrome is a gremlin in your own head, and the origin of that gremlin, you know, it could be very long standing. It could be from childhood, or it could be from school, or it could be from previous working experiences or personal relationships. If the thoughts are, what do they think of me? Generally, most people are thinking of themselves. They're not really thinking a lot about you. So you need to start unpacking those negative thoughts, and doing that ABCDE technique might help. You know, so if you think about what are the thoughts of your imposter syndrome? I don't belong. I'm not worth it. You know, I'm not qualified. I'm not good enough. They're going to find me out. And you need to start unpacking those thoughts and finding evidence to counter that. So if it stands up in court, that thing that I mentioned, so find the evidence. So, you know, I'm not good enough to do this job. Well, actually, I've got this qualification. They've given me this responsibility. I've been working here for 6 months, 2 years, 25 years, whatever it might be. And sense check that data with other people, with peers, with friends, with family. There's a TED talk by a lady called IMechE, and she talks about power posing. And there is something about physically manifesting your body to trick your mind into thinking a slightly different way. So if you are going into a big meeting, or you're having an important discussion or whatever it is, actually standing up, standing tall, thinking yourself competent and confident and resilient will trick your mind into thinking more along those lines. The other thing is, you know, we are programmed from being chased by lions and tigers to look for danger. We're looking for danger at all times, things that are going to hurt us or harm us or, you know, be dangerous. So it takes 7 positive things to counter 1 negative thought. So if you're thinking a negative thing, I need you to write down 7 positive things about yourself to counter that thought, because you're programmed and wired for danger. So we need to switch you into thinking a bit more confidently.
Excellent. Yeah, so the second input we asked from attendees was what was, you know, free stroke inexpensive ways to reward or recognise your employees. Again, there's a bit of a common thread. I don't know if you'd like to stab a guess as to, Fiona, what the common theme is there at all, or
feedback, immediate feedback.
The feedback's there. The one that kind of came through is saying a simple thank you, basically. I think is along those lines, really. Yeah. I
do enjoy Stefan English's big pay rises. Yeah, let's pay everyone. Pay everyone loads of more money. People are not motivated by money generally, but as you say, thank yous are inexpensive, and ways of saying thank you. So, you know, if you build better relationships with your team and you understand them on a much more personal level, you know, buying them a book about their favorite topic, or, you know, if you know that they're on a diet, don't buy them chocolate, buy them something else. You know, it's about thinking about the appropriate ways of thanking you. I had one recently, and it was written on an invoice for being awesome and super flexible. And it made me beam with pride, and, you know, I felt really appreciated with those words from a customer that had said, you know, we really appreciate you. So it is about your language and your tone and all of those things as well.
There's a good suggestion here, which was give somebody the opportunity to lead on topic, or to be seen as a recognised specialist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good. You know, if you've got experts in your team, bring them into your meetings and give them showcase. But also, I think being generous about other people's competencies. You know, if you get approached for a job, for example, and you're not interested, but actually I know Darren would be excellent for that job, then I'm going to say, do you know, I would support Darren. I think he's got great skills to do this thing. So it's about being generous, and not necessarily in front of the person, or, you know, kind of gratuitously, but being generous with your knowledge and your skills and your connections, and celebrating people's expertise and saying, you know, Darren really contributed to this sales pitch that we did for the business, and, you know, we wouldn't have got it over the line without him. So let's say thank you. So yeah, absolutely.
What are your thoughts? I think Alex Ferguson, using your sport analogy, used to say, always praise in public, criticise in private. So are you a fan of praising people in front of the team and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think where credit's due. I think, you know, when it's genuine and authentic and it has a real impact, either for the individual or for the culture of the team, absolutely. You know, people who just throw out willy-nilly, you know, great work kind of stuff, when it gets overused, it sort of diminishes the power and the value of that. But you need to be authentic, and the first thing to do is, how would I like to receive this thing, comment, you know, whatever, reward, recognition. You know what bad feels like, but then sense check it with. So, for example, I worked with another lady on Formula Student who was quite introverted. And I thought it'd be really lovely to get her up on stage in front of 3,000 people and get the students to sing her happy birthday in their native languages, because there was about 40 different countries represented. And I had overlooked the fact that she was quite introverted and she doesn't like being centre of attention, and she absolutely hated it. Whereas in its intention, it was a nice thing for the people that she was working with to celebrate her on her birthday. In the actual execution, she hated it. So, you know, it's thinking about the intention and also the individual.
Very good. There's an interesting comment here as well about utilising something called MS Viva, which is part of MS Teams, which is where you can send digital praise to individuals. Have you come across that before at all?
I have not come across that before. So thank you very much. I'll be taking that one and having a little look at it. But yeah, again, you know, there's lots of different ways to reward and recognize, and, you know, use the right ones that for you and for the people that you're speaking with.
Very good. Oh, yes, a question here as well, actually, which is probably the last one that we'll have to kind of wrap up. What's a good way of showing appreciation to a mentor other than saying thank you? Do you think about bottles of wine?
It depends if they like wine. To a mentor, I think the biggest thank you can give to a mentor is being committed to the things that you have discussed and talked about, and living the changes that you have made, or, you know, being successful or thriving, or even better, passing that baton on to someone else and mentoring someone else. So I think that's, as a coach and a mentor myself, you know, seeing other people thrive is a great thank you.
Yeah, rewarding itself almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, so I think we've just got a little bit of housekeeping to finish up with. You can probably see on your screen now that there's a number of courses that kind of work on this theme and develop this theme, along with elements of training which we are running on the public programme. You can see the new engineer manager, aspiring engineer manager, managing teams, etc. The boot camps that we do. If you want more information, the website is a great resource for any of this information. In terms of today's webinar and previous webinars we've hosted on various topics, technical and non-technical, if you go to the website, you can find links to all the previous webinars. We will be sending a link to all delegates today for today's presentation as well. But really, just finally, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who's attended today. Thank you for Fiona, who helped out actually in relatively short notice. So big praise to Fiona for that one. But hopefully everyone's found it very useful and found the topic of interest. Any questions that you might have, you know, we've had them in the chat. It's been great. But again, just thanks for everyone for attending, and have a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone.